This meeting of the Preservation Board is now in order. I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Fassman, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, there we go. Other commissioners will join us in process. Commissioner, I'm not going to ask you about the minutes. I am going to ask you to look at the agenda and tell me if you would mind deferring information items to either a later point in this meeting or to another meeting, because the person who was going to do the information item is not here.
And we're talking about the first
Where it says information item. The
preliminary review.
Yeah. So we're going to defer that consideration, and I'd like to defer agenda item A until later in the meeting as well. Let's begin the meeting with B 2300 Escalade. Is that okay with you? Is that okay with you?
I must recuse, sir.
Okay then.
That would be fine.
Fine.
Sorry? We can present talk?
Okay then. The commissioner whose name I did not call, who is present, is not yet here as a commissioner. Instead, I'm calling 2300 Pestalozzi. And whenever you are ready.
Okay, I'm Jane Cameron from Cultural Resource Office. The preliminary review construct attached townhouses or row houses first on this site, which is in Bennett Park Historic District, located at the corner of Pestalozzi and Indiana. And to begin, I have two letters of support, one from the Bennett Park Neighborhood Association stating that they support the project, but they would like some additional stipulations. I'll get to that when I show you the project. And then another from Alderman Kenneth Portman saying he supports the letter from the Bennett Park. And this is the site. Indiana is to the left, Pestalozzi to the right. Corner property, and it has no access to an alley. And this is the proposed design from Clean Architects, and it is, as you can see, 5 attached townhouses. Bennett Park standards require that a model example be selected that is a historic model example of a building that exists or could have existed in the Bennett Park neighborhood. Model example. Now, it does not require that it be later should be copied, but it does say that it should be the foundation for the design. And this is the Roman floor. A rendering showing the townhouses, they do step back as they go to the south. And the idea of the mansard roof is interpreted with a recessed third story deck. There will be a parapet railing on the deck. Another rendering, looking at it from the south. Notice the very small little house that is adjacent to it. One front elevation of one of the townhouses, and the rear elevation will be a cement pinnable siding painted a brick-like color. And the Bennett Park neighborhood would like to see that the end unit that is adjacent to Pestalozzi, in fact, have brick turns on the facade. Just that end unit. Elevation that will face Pestalozzi. Okay, that in a second. Give you a little context. Site from Pestalozzi looking directly south. Note the 3-story building that is adjacent to the property. This building will be more compatible with the scale of that building than it could be with the tiny little building. The shot looking down Pestalozzi to the south, to the east. And there is a little very historic house, which I hope someone's taking care of. That is not part of this development. but it is directly adjacent and much smaller in scale. It is also, as you can see, a much higher grade. This is Indiana, and there is a wide variety of scale and setbacks along this block. Opposite to the site in Indiana, another building of similar scale was proposed. And that's below the west. So, the staff's comment is that we find the design acceptable, the model example is appropriate, so we are concerned about the design of this facade, which is in fact a street facade, and doesn't seem to carry the vocabulary of the front elevations around this side, and it does seem to be a little busy. What we would prefer to see is that the balcony be removed, and that a simple double-hung window, similar to the one below it, be substituted, and then possibly another double-hung window on the second story on the right side of the elevation. So with those recommendations, we are recommending preliminary approval.
Commissioner Passman, your question?
No.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Arrange your presentation any way you want.
Yes, sir.
I see two of you have signed up.
Do you want me to show you?
Did you all include the site plan?
I did.
Did not. So maybe just one more back. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jim. So I mentioned the site. My name's. Do I need to swear in or?
Preliminary review.
Preliminary review. Okay. So I could really tell a lot right here. I'm kidding. So
we assumed that you would. If you're not going to now, you should say so.
Right. Okay. So this property, like most developments, was somewhat site-driven. We had a difficult site, and we met with Cultural Resources early in the design process to try to figure out the most appropriate way to develop this site. The owners wished to maximize the site, and it looked like we could get 4 or 5 townhouses on this site if we looked at it in different ways. And so factory ideas were considered, where there would be multiple entries, different curb cuts. Just a lot of different ideas were considered, but it sort of boiled down to this. If we were going to make that site usable, we needed to create an interior alley. The best place to do that was on the west side of the lot. And at the west side of the lot, you do not have access to the public alley, so we create our own. So that's the back side. So what we're looking at is the front or east elevation. So the idea then would be to have the alley, this interior alley in the back, and the building's facing forward. So that's why the buildings are laid out the way they are. Now the street has sort of an interesting angle to it, which is where the step-back facade came from. And then my client wished to go with a more contemporary design. So we looked at the Ripple Row project down in Soulard, and originally we actually came closer to mimicking the design that was there with bays at an angle. At one point we actually considered mansard roofs. But another constraint of this site is the fact that after we build that parking lot and get the drive in there, there's really no outdoor space. So we thought rather than put a mansard roof up on the 3rd floor, why not pull that back and let that be outdoor space? And that would be sort of the personality of, if you will, of the building, where it's saying 2016 and it's not trying to harken back to another era. But the overall form of the building does when it looks at Ripple Row. And then the bays were, those evolved too over time through meetings with both Cultural Resources and the Neighborhood Association. Those evolved into what you see there. A more straight bay that was more usable on the inside, brings in great light, and it actually mimics the forms of the smaller houses just across the street on Indiana. So as you walk down the street and you're just looking at the first 2 floors, it's going to feel just like the houses that are already there. It'll be a little bit more modern in form, but you wouldn't even know that that top is there until you step back, or perhaps you're looking at it from a building across the way. Benton Park was very receptive to modern design there, so and the owners thought it was a good time for it. And so that's what we have for you here. Now, as far as these concessions, I don't know if we need to address those now. I guess I could ask the owner Mickey, did you sign up?
I did.
So that would be more his situation to discuss that. So maybe I could ask Mickey Romano to join us up here at the podium.
Hello. I think the question was the Pestalozzi side and moving the balcony and adding a double hung window on the second floor, is that correct?
Did you see the staff recommendation?
Well, I saw that it talked about making the facade more appropriate, but I didn't see where it particularly said that, but you guys had mentioned moving the balcony and adding the window.
Window, balcony, type window, et cetera.
Yeah, I think we're comfortable with that.
Is your architect comfortable with that?
The balconies the balcony you see there was inspired by balconies that we see in Benton Park on residential corner properties, but I don't think it's going to affect the project that much. It'll actually be some cost save. Now, as far as, Dan, I don't know if we need to address the things the neighborhood association brought up.
That would be a good idea.
So was it just that one?
Essentially, it was just returning the brick on the
That's it. So they're asking you to wrap brick around three sides of that first unit.
How much of a wrap?
They want the whole first unit spot. So close to Pestalozzi.
22.
Sure. If we could not do that, we would rather stick with the siding if we can.
So I didn't get a chance to read their letter, Jan. Is their stipulation that they would hold their support if we didn't agree?
No, they did say that they wanted to continue to work with you.
So on that issue, stand back.
You know it's not.
I move that the reservation board grant preliminary approval for the new construction, the stipulation that the Pestalozzi elevation be redesigned to be more consistent with the new facade, and the final drawing to materials and colors to be reviewed and approved by the cultural district office. That does not include the stipulation of that.
Yeah. Are you all satisfied with that motion? Good. Okay, I second it. I don't know that we need a discussion. You vote for or against?
For.
Okay, good enough. Motion carries. This has preliminary approval.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, we are going to go back to agenda item A. Now that the 18-4 is more represented here.
Agenda item A is a preliminary review to demolish the house at 4205 Maryland Avenue in the commercial building at 345 Whittier Street for the construction of MSD's gas pipe square sewer improvement project. It's in the Central Weston Local Historic District in Ward 18. And it might be kind of familiar because we in fact reviewed this earlier, and preliminary approval was not granted at that time. So we have more work that's been done. The owner applicants are Paulina Middleton and Charles and Regina Bass, the owners respectively of the Maryland and Whittier property, and Jerry Young of MSD is the applicant for what will happen next. Here's the site here. These are both properties, the house on Maryland and the commercial building there in front of it. Here's the site in on the map, on the west side of Whittier. And then north of Maryland there. Chinook is a large footprint building to the right on the east side of Whittier. This is the Whittier property looking northwest with the red brick 1920s commercial building with the taller rear addition. And this is the residence at Maryland. And in the project site, showing a bit more of the Whittier Street context with the larger buildings across Maryland south. And to the right, north of the alley, is a large residence. So here's a site plan of what MSD is proposing, and this is similar to what we saw before with the equipment area on the north end of the site, close to the alley. There would be widening and reuse of the curb cut that currently exists for the auto repair business or whatever that business is there. And it would provide access to the site near a gate in the fence around the equipment there. So it would be enough for that. The area outlined in green and the green symbol for the bushes there show an area of landscaping that's more developed. The flowering bushes there on the perimeter of the property and a bioretention zone outlined in green. The forebay, I will show you a photo of what this looks like in a bit. Because the project might require the necessity of removing the iron gate that goes on Maryland Avenue there, this plan shows the proposal is to remove the green zone and to plant some trees ground covered planting at this point. This plan also shows a privacy fence on the west side of the property. Should the property owner there be receptive to that idea, and it also shows a privacy fence around the equipment area, as well as a 6-foot metal perimeter fence that I will also show you with that. So we have a more developed landscape plan. So basically, the installation would be quite similar to what we put before. So these images show what the above ground elements would look like. So the cabinets there with the bollards. That type of fence in the upper photograph is not what's being proposed. The perimeter fence is shown on the lower photograph. The metal fence similar to that. Although it's not proposed before, due to the visibility of the site, MSD is proposing a privacy fence that would be solid, just an image of a privacy fence, not necessarily the design. And the forebay of the bioretention cell is the safe area where the water enters into the area, and the horizontal surface of it would be stamped concrete, as shown in the upper example, and I commented that these could have a quite more urban look than the somewhat suburban look of some of the house, and the MSD is proposing this like stone perimeter wall to close the forebay, so that has a little bit more facility and formality to the design. Don't know exactly the final design. So that is the project.
Actually, to make it more urban, we should put a concrete poster on it.
Yeah. So repeating it, right. Go back and talk about the buildings that are to be demolished. That was of concern, and typically we don't recommend critical demolition of the So I went through, as you may remember, the standards for demolition, Central West End Historic District standards, and then I supplemented with those in the Preservation Review district standards rather than the other way around. So the first standard is the West End standard, discusses architectural quality and special character. And while the house on Maryland Avenue is very similar to others along the off there, it's, to my mind, no better, no worse. It's very typical. Some of the houses have the gable face facing the tree, the second-story bay windows, of course, some of that. So it would be rather typical or representative building on that block of Maryland, rather one that I see in particular high architectural quality. For a commercial building, again, in a similar way, it's hard to understand how it could be an asset in the historic district streetscape considering its current use, but it is a really decent 1920s commercial building. So they would both have the same status and sense of protection under the ordinances that I'm looking at. Both merit building, I don't have standing or special character, and either one of those normally they would be protected, but we have the unusual circumstances here at the The conditions of the buildings aren't any reason for their being proposed for demolition. Of course, their presence in the district is a factor that they're visible buildings on the streetscape. Their absence would be quite noticeable to pedestrians in that area. The replacement would be quite different, so there would be some changes in the visual landscape there, setting, as well as the impact on urban fabric. All these things are related. Yes, we're going to those two historic buildings and have a new I described the pumping station and how it has plans for it has been developed the last time we saw this project. Now moving to the demolition review criteria and the demolition review ordinances. The development plan is not applicable. There's no sense of economic hardship here. The site for this project is driven by the need for the sewer system. Commonly controlled properties, such as structures, those criteria do not apply. So there's a place to sum up, and I have to change my recommendation from last time, that my preliminary findings have been that MSD has carefully cited the project for maximum efficiency and to solve a serious sewer problem. The application is a factor. Proposed construction that it wouldn't have an intrusive presence, and I believe with this improved landscaping that description holds, it would definitely have a different presence, but different isn't necessarily intrusive in the landscaping, and is proposed, and the need for the installation of the strip that don't necessarily perceived as intrusive. The demolition review criteria is necessarily supported these demolitions. The preliminary review criteria refers to unusual circumstances. We had that here for a facility that would relieve problems in a large number of properties. I guess I can unofficially look at this as a sacrifice lot. Someone needs to give up something in order for a greater and so based on these findings, I recommend that you approve the demolition of the two merit buildings. As MSD has carefully cited the project for maximum efficiency and to solve problems. The site is, of course, in the central west end. I said before, it has a varied character, and it does. It would have an effect on that character. The project would not introduce a lot of the historic buildings. Some of our strongest streetscapes on the west end, with the highest architectural quality, and with the stipulation that the final landscaping components and details be approved by the cultural
Questions, please?
Do they have control over these sites
Yes, you do have control, and, Mr. Nichols, Brad Newland from MSC will bring the statement to that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, it looks like, a property owner and MSD and citizen input. Where's MSD? Arrange your presentation the way you want to. Sure.
So real briefly, I wanted to go through why we're doing this project. Oh, I'm sorry, my name is Brad Evoy, M-E-V-O-Y. In the city of St. Louis, there's combined sewer systems, so a lot of the county, there's separate sewer systems where you have both a stormwater system, as you see on the left, and a sanitary system on the right. In the city of St. Louis, you have all the sewers going into one pipe. It's a combined sewer system. A lot of cities of this age around the country have this system, and it creates some special challenges, and we're trying to address those challenges with our project. The area that you see the blue lines going out, those would be the lines, the surface lines that we have to build. This area is plagued by basement backups. When those combined sewer systems, when it rains, they're overcharged. It backs up in people's basements in this area. Numerous complaints in this area that we've been trying to address, and the way to address that is to build a system that drains that area to a pump station, being the big blue square that you see there. That's the site that we're here to talk about today. That pump station would collect all the sewage through those blue lines, and it would pump it out and out to a deeper sewer that's just adjacent to this area on the other side of Schnucks. This area really is a low-lying area, kind of a bowl out in the middle of the city. It's been plagued for years with drainage problems, and that's what this is to address. So we've showed this exhibit previously. Betsy talked about it. We have several different programs going on throughout the area. One of them is our green infrastructure program. We routinely are building green infrastructure to address these combined sewer issues that we have. And what the idea is to build these rain gardens that the rain comes down and goes into these rain gardens and gets down into the ground rather than in the sewers, which then in turn helps relieve some of the issues with the combined sewer area. So we propose to incorporate a rain garden in this area that has a lot of vegetation, a lot of different things that would be incorporated. It adds an amenity to the neighborhood. We've probably been here in the past to show some of these before. We've built several of these across the kind of north city area. We showed before, this is a typical pump station. Large utility type boxes is what you're going to see there. Those are the control mechanisms related to the pump station itself. We talked about the 6-foot fence we would put around there. And we also talked about a privacy fence. I think rather than the privacy fence that we showed going across the entire north side of the property in question, a privacy fence around the pump station mechanism probably would serve the same purpose. I think an interview with the resident that lives in the home to the north would tell us which way to go if she wants a privacy fence across the entire north side. The forebay here, what this rain garden would do, you can kind of see some of the dirt in the forebay there. What this does, it serves two purposes. It cleans up the water coming off the street, so we would take all the flow off the street, we would take out the grit and the salts this time of year, and a lot of the pollutants that would normally get into the streams, we would take those out, capture them in this forebay, where they can settle out, and then we have a maintenance truck that would clean this out routinely. We got one where it was dirty, just to give you an idea of what the amount of stuff that gets accumulated in there that would normally be in the stream. So that's where the water first enters into, allows that water to slow down and settle out those particulates. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your comment earlier, but we were trying to come up with a more finished look for the forebay in regards to how we finish this. It's a shallow area, but if we could finish it with a wall and make it fit more with the neighborhood, we'd be open to do that. Then we had some pictures of the plants. These were of the small shrubs that we're proposing around the outside of the rain garden to help soften the look. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Property acquisition. We currently have both the properties under a sales contract for each one of those. We have certain due diligence that we have to go through, environmental testing and other things, but once we're through that, we'll close on the properties, and obviously we want to get everything taken care of here before we close the property. But they're both under contract.
So the closing of on the properties are contingent upon the outcome here?
Well, obviously, if you're telling us we can't use the properties as a pump station, that would dramatically affect, we're not in the real estate business, we're not going to buy the properties if we can't use them.
You have a plan B?
Plan B, that would be, we were asked to look at Plan B. Comes with a huge amount of cost, to be honest with you. And it's not going to be any less intrusive than it is right now. That's a good answer. Plan B, this is the low spot in the area. We need to locate this pump station in the low spot. So we can move somewhere close to here, but not very far. One of the people asked us, why don't we go to the Snooks parking lot? Obviously, the Snooks parking lot folks would have some problems with that. They'd eliminate their parking. Plus, it really creates a lot of impact getting around their property to get to the other side. So we looked here in the general area, knowing that we have to keep the pump station in the low spot. I'm not sure how your format works. Any other questions, or am I done?
Actually, I'm letting you arrange your property owner and your MSD presentation the way you want. If you think everything has been said and that they do not need to speak, I'll move on to the rest of the people who want to speak.
Okay. I can't speak for the property owners. I'm not sure if the property owners are here. Is there a property owner?
There's one here.
Okay. I mean, if she has questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, and I guess I don't want to take her time. She might.
Let's talk to Ms. Middleton. Mr. MSD, why don't you stay right back up over there?
I'll stay here. You want to?
We'll put her here.
I go here?
And we'll leave you there. You're right here.
Hello.
Tell us your name for the record, please.
Lolita Middleton.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a cold. I'm sorry.
I had it last week. I sympathize.
Yeah, I've had it all week as well.
Could you lean back just?
Oh.
No, just keep it cold.
Mr. Richard. Oh,
I am. Okay, so how do you feel about this?
Well, I am the property owner at 4205 Maryland, along with my husband, John Middleton. When MSD first approached us back in June of 2015, we had mixed emotions at first, and it was more so that it was more of a personal thing for us. This house had been in my family since over 40-some years, and at first it took a minute, but after thinking about it, we've been dealing. I can just speak for myself. I know this house in particular, this property, we've been seeing flooding since the 80s. I remember the whole area flooded one time to where my father's Lincoln was completely submerged. My brother's car was floating down the street. My one brother swam out to open the manhole, and it was just crazy. And we've always had sewer backup water, always. 2008, when my parents had passed away, I obtained the house at that time. We had flooding then. We lost personal items, and it was, I lost personal pictures of my parents. It was just a lot at the time. 2011, we had 6 feet of water in our basement. We lost everything. I have pictures if you'd like to see. And it's been rough. This past May, our whole street flooded. It was like a lake, you know. So we support this project 100%. Like Ms. Bessie said, you know, we're willing to give up our home for the greater good because it needs to get done. It's been needing to get done for a long time. And I've always been supporting this since after we got through our personal emotions. It needs to get done. I know my neighbors, they have problems. We're at the low end. We get all of the water. So halfway up the block, they're okay. You know, they don't get any flooding, but we get all the flooding there. And, you know, it's just been rough for the, you know, just dealing with the cleanup and everything. And I know MSD, they're tired of paying out money. You know, every time, you know, we send in claims because we need some help getting this fixed. And, you know, looking over what they proposed, it looks good for what I'm looking at. I know there's been problems back and forth with the neighborhood and with everyone about how the landscape is going to look, you know, and how this is going to look. You know what? To me personally, it's not about it. I know it's about the aesthetics, but it's also about getting this flooding problem fixed. And I really think that what they came up with is good. And, you know, it needs to be done. And I'm willing to sacrifice my family home and let them do that. You know, then it gets torn down, you know, yeah, it's going to be rough, but it's just memories. I can take them with me. The house, it needs to get done. It needs to go. So be it. You know, my husband.
Now, I got the MSD guy captive for you. Do you have any questions for him?
I don't. I mean, I don't really have any. We've been in contact, so I kind of know what was going on for their end. I just needed to know. I mean, wanted you guys to just know from us where we're coming from and how we are supporting them with this project. And that was one reason why we signed the contract back when we did. So basically, yeah, that's it.
Any questions for her? No? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. James Dwyer?
Members of the board, here I am again, representing the Central West End Association's Planning and Development Committee. I recall that I was here last time, I guess in November, on this topic, and we left that meeting encouraged by the prospect, I thought, of dialogue that hopefully would lead to a mutually acceptable resolution of whatever the issues were. And in that regard, I have participated in 3 meetings with various representatives of MSD and, at the same time, neighborhood representatives. And I have participated in 2 other meetings solely with residents of the neighborhood in an effort to clarify what might be possible and what is most desirable. Our first meeting with MSD involved the presentation on our part of several ideas that we thought deserved exploration, one of which was intended to determine whether it would be possible to avoid the demolition of the residential structure. We have never given too much concern to the structure that is directly on Whittier. And the notion that we proposed for consideration was a question, really, and that was, would it be possible to take the pipes, the underground storage pipes that are presently planned for that site, move them eastward and southward as extensions of the pipes that are planned for the commercial property, put them under the street. And the idea was same capacity, just a different location. And the disappointing aspect, it was agreed that yes, they would investigate that. The disappointing aspect is that when we inquired about it in a subsequent meeting, we were informed that, oh, we can't do it, it would cost $1.4 million. Well, I've been doing this sort of stuff for 50 years, and I am highly skeptical about that number. There was no evidence offered to support $1.4 million. So I don't know whether it's legitimate or not. I suspect not. The point is that I came away with the sense that there wasn't a good faith effort being made to find a resolution, and that is disturbing to me. So, here we are today. Bottom line, we do not have any argument with the need for a resolution. The mechanical situation requires a resolution. We understand that. Our hope was that it would be possible to find a way to accomplish that without demolishing the residential structure. Assuming that is not possible, then the next best case for us is that, as required by the ordinance, that whatever replaces the structure that is permitted to be demolished be reasonable and acceptable. And so we have worked with MSD in that regard as well, in an effort to define what site improvements might be appropriate, affordable, and result in something that would be of benefit to the neighborhood. I think if we're giving up the right to retain the house, we're standing aside and allowing demolition to occur, there needs to be a quid pro quo. And I don't think that that has been accomplished yet. I think it is possible to do so, but I looked at the plans as they were being presented earlier. I saw that concrete block wall, and I recalled that in our first meeting with MSD, they didn't want to do any concrete block walls because they don't want to have graffiti on the walls, and they don't want to be responsible for cleaning the graffiti. I understand that, but now why do we have a concrete wall? So my point is that there are potential refinements that I think would result in a better set of conditions for the neighbors going forward. I think they are achievable. I think they can only be reached if there is good faith effort on all sides to do that. As I looked at the photographs and the site plan, it occurred to me that just as you wouldn't hire a landscape architect to design a pump station, I don't think you would hire an engineer to design a landscape. And so my proposal is that if you are so inclined, that you grant preliminary approval to allow the demolition of both structures, subject to the condition that a binding, detailed agreement be executed by all parties, and by that I mean the neighborhood, MSD, and the Planning and Development Committee, describing the improvements that would be made to the property going forward. And I think with that kind of understanding, that condition, there would be sufficient incentive on the part of all parties to find agreement and to move forward. So that is what I would recommend to the board for your consideration.
Would you not also want us to make approval conditional on their actually building a project?
Well, of course. And that was implicit, I thought, in the testimony from Mr. Uboy, that they wouldn't proceed to acquire the property unless they knew they had approval to build the project. Yeah, so I agree with you, yes.
Question? Thank you.
No, I have a question. So you gave them some very specific things, points and things that you'd like to see in the landscaping of that property. Well,
let me back up one step and say that if my memory serves me, and I think it does, the notion of a rain garden is one that we advanced as a possibility. That was rather interesting that it's now in the plan. So there was progress. I think that the hardcore details, what the fencing would look like, exactly where the fencing would go, whether the driveway should be coming in from Whittier as is presently planned or not. That's a topic that has been discussed. I don't know that it has been resolved adequately, but nevertheless, it's an issue that should be addressed. The nature and location of whatever landscaping or hardscaping goes in should be defined. And I think that can only be done effectively with a plan. And a plan that people can sign off on and say, yes, this is what we will do.
And so, you had not seen a design that included some of these elements until today?
No, I've seen an evolution of plans, actually. I just don't think that plan represents what I would consider to be an acceptable final resolution.
That's not my question. You talked about the rain, that you came up with the idea for the rain garden. Were you aware that they had incorporated it?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was aware of that. There's another sort of topic of discussion that I believe is an opportunity and deserves consideration. MSD has rejected the concept that has been proposed, and that is that the cul-de-sac at the end of the street, in my humble estimation, is not particularly attractive at the moment. The landscaping is half dead, the fencing is out of scale and not particularly attractive, and that area is part of the project area. It will be disrupted as part of this construction project. So a proposal that we advanced was that rather than simply reinstall what's there now, a plan be developed that would result in a better set of conditions at the end of the street on the cul-de-sac, which would benefit everyone in the neighborhood. Doesn't necessarily have to cost any more or much more, and it could improve significantly the environment in the area, and I would like to see that be considered. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, you're the last one.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When we left, I guess it's
Say your name for the tape.
Oh, Jeff Winderland.
Proceed.
When we left the meeting in October or November, whenever we last met, Alderman Kennedy suggested that we all get together for some sort of working group with MSD and find a way forward, find something that we could all live with. And to that end, I solicited volunteers through the neighborhood association. And then when not many people volunteered, I had to reach out specifically to people and get them to volunteer to be part of a process. And we had a couple meetings, as Jim referred to, so we actually decided that even though Jim is not part of the Maryland Gaslight or the Maryland neighborhood, that because his organization's input in this process would be much informed by our input in the process, that we would work together. So the meetings that Jim referred to are also meetings that representatives of the block and the neighborhood attended also. And I guess that just a handful of items that I think I want to draw your attention to is that we ended up, I think we had 7 people in the working group, 5 of whom live on the block, some of them in the condominiums directly across the street, one a couple doors out from the site. So people directly exposed to this property. The engagement with MSD never actually felt like what Alderman Kennedy asked us to do. At no point did they ever ask us what we wanted. Every encounter seemed to consist primarily of them telling us stuff. And so even though we never got to a point where they ever asked for what it would take for us to support their project and their goals, we went ahead and met on the 5th of January and hammered out as a group kind of what we'd like to see. And sent that to, I guess, through the alderman, we sent it to them. Did you guys get copies of them? The rest of the board get copies of that? So we actually did make up a list of things that we thought would be an adequate compensation for the loss of the historic houses. Just a couple other items. One, I think that the commercial building is not something that we are enthusiastic to see disappear either. But having the owner go away is so important to the neighborhood that losing that building is an acceptable alternative. The flooding issues and one of the things that we asked, we broke our request into sort of physical improvements we'd like to see made and then some operational things. And we're not hydrologists, we don't know a lot about this, but we did ask that something be done to address the stormwater flood. So much of what Felita was talking about is stormwater flooding. The sewer backups will be addressed by the project that MSD is proposing. The stormwater, the fact that this is just a low spot that fills up with water when it rains heavily, we aren't sure what can be done. We have kind of the idea that maybe digging a giant hole, putting some storage tanks in it, and then backfilling with rock is going to create a lot of subsurface airspace that might soak up water. but we don't know. We don't know what else could be done to improve the stormwater impact of the area. So in addition to requesting some specific things that they build when they put this area back together, we also requested that they tell us what's possible in terms of ameliorating stormwater problems in the future, while working in this area. And then just to kind of illustrate sort of that lack of engagement, they've always been pleasant. We've never had a hostile conversation. But the point where they actually seem like they were trying to work with us is kind of illustrated, or the lack of that is kind of illustrated by the phenomenon of some of the things that we've heard about their thinking on the plan that they've presented. So when this plan was first cooked up, it consisted of a plan to do open-cut installation of new sanitary sewer in the alleys. And we were told at a neighborhood meeting that, they actually had a total public engagement process. So they had a public neighborhood meeting with many people in attendance, where they explained that the alleys might be closed for months at a time. There could be periods of 4 to 6 months when the alleys would be closed. They wouldn't close them all. They'd close one and work on the next one. But the alleys would be closed for months at a time. And when that was driven by their engineering process, that was fine with them. When we suggested that they make the truck access for servicing the pump station just from the alley instead of driving onto the site and having all the additional pavement, it was unacceptable to them. They didn't want to block the alley. So things like that, I think, show where we've not quite been working together. And finally, I think our bottom line from the neighborhood group standpoint, the perspective is that what they're showing now, with the limitations that Jim referred to, where we've got a landscape design that's been created by the engineering department. They sort of I like Manhattan euonymus, but a landscaping design should probably include more than one species of plant. Given the limitations of what we've seen so far, our sense was that what they're showing isn't bad if they were going to do it on a vacant lot. If they were just coming to the neighborhood and there's a vacant lot there or a parking lot there and not destroying a historic resource, that what they're proposing to do with some tweaks and some improvements and some more details is probably fine. But the part where they compensate the community and the neighborhood for the loss of the historic building is left out. And, as Jim referred to, we think that some more comprehensive improvements to that end of the block, and new gates, new landscaping at the street closure itself. Right now they're showing 3 trees. 3 trees is not an improvement over what we have now. So we just I kind of thought at various points in this process, really right after the beginning, that maybe they needed to hear no again. That the first time they heard no, they didn't quite get the message, and maybe they need to hear no again. But actually what Jim's proposed, which is just that they began to figure out some conditional approval that requires them to get to yes with us, probably accomplishes it.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Assuming that we actually cannot delegate the conditions of approval to you all, ours and our staff to do, we cannot approve demolition in order to relocate unsavory neighbors, although if we had that authority, we use it more often. And we cannot impose conditions on MSD beyond those required by the ordinance, hours of operation, whatever. Do you want to support this or oppose this?
Well, it sounds like based upon those 3 criteria, the best case scenario is to vote it down again, send them back out with the same instructions to find something that we'll all come together and support, and we'll do it again.
Brian, you feel the same way?
Well, I would say yes. You're talking to me, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would say unfortunately, given the scenario that you painted, I would have to say yes, that I would agree with what Jeff said. I think further refinement and negotiation is critical, however we get there.
Mr. Chairman, can I answer a couple questions?
Absolutely.
First
First off, I'd like to clarify, we're making a substantial investment in this area to address the needs of the residents. And while it may have been portrayed that we have not worked with the groups, I think that's a mischaracterization. It was interesting to find out they came up with the idea for a rain garden, but we've done a lot of things here to try to appease the various things that they've requested via a letter to the aldermen that ultimately we received much after that. But you have to remember, this is a public project, this is public money, and a lot of the things that we're talking about here, they're going to cost money, and they're going to cost the public money. And we completely understand the concern about taking a historic home down, even a historic commercial business that you've seen there. But you have to realize this is a substantial investment in this community. I think we've made great strides to try to address a lot of the comments that were made. And that being said, any stipulation you put down, I have no rights to accept those stipulations, and we probably wouldn't do that. So,
Is this the only project that MSD needs to do in the next 6 months?
nope, quite a few of them. And there's a chance, I want to make sure you understand that. We've got limited funding. If this project isn't going to go, we're going to take the funding somewhere else. That's the reality of things. And this is, I feel for the resident, this has drug on a lot longer than we ever anticipated. I feel for her and how she's been kind of kept in limbo. Now we have two property owners that would be in the same situation. So, thank you.
Now, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm not clear about the stipulation.
It sounded like the two gentlemen that spoke earlier wanted to set up additional stipulations for the approval for the demolitions that we're talking about here today. I can't agree to those. That would be something that someone from our office or our board would have to chime in on.
But you are willing to continue to try to work out some kind of meaningful design,
Well, I think
taking other additional elements that
we've
talked
been,
about?
it seems like it's been a one-way street here, and I know it's been portrayed a different way. But at the end of the day, we're a utility trying to provide a service and trying to bring a benefit to the customers at a decent, reasonable cost. And beyond what we're doing here, I think is really concerning.
So that's saying what?
That's saying, I think we've come a long way. I think, there's been requests to redo the end of the street. There's been a lot of different requests that we think are beyond what our requirements are to move forward with this public project.
If it's any consolation, I believe it's probably beyond what our ordinance would let us ask you to do anyway.
I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Could you come back up? I have a question. The neighborhoods are clearly not satisfied with some of the details. Is staff talking to the neighbors?
Well, no, I set up a meeting and the neighborhood declined to come to the last one. We just set up all this, I'm not sure why, given a real good reason why. I think it's important to have the property landscape and landscape plan appropriate. And alluded to, we don't exact mitigation for the loss of the limits of how much we can add. And so that's why, I put in that, as usual, we would approve the final landscape plan, and I think there's some room for, not have a monoculture of one of the shrubs. I think that's something we could address, adding in a large number of additional elements. So I'm willing to have input from the neighborhood that will help us to their involvement.
I do not believe that we can impose that by ordinance as a commission anyway. Mr. Kennedy, you have a motion.
I would move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval, and the final approval, and the design be finally approved by the Cultural Resources Office. Let me get my motion. What I want to achieve here is the community being able to continue to work with your office on their input on the design, and that your office does not provide a final approval until something is worked out favorably to you, that you consider to be correct. You want to add that? The motion then would be that the Preservation Board provide preliminary approval, and that proof of control of property.
Before the design is executed.
That there's proof of control of the property before the design is executed, and that the Cultural Resources Office approves the final design after consultation with the neighbor.
A second to that? Melanie? Commissioner Castle, second discussion?
Can I read it back, make sure I have it?
Yes, you mean the motion's been made and seconded?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I have it for the minutes for later. So the motion directs Cultural Resources Office to work with MSD to approve final design after consultation with neighborhood, and the project to be designed to be executed after MSD would take control of the property. Is that okay?
Seems to me, from what I'm hearing from the neighbors, not going to have teeth unless we deny this. To actually get these, their design issues in. So,
It's my understanding, though, that there are no legal grounds in which to...
That we can draft the ordinance with us, the staff with the approval and private.
The purpose of a preliminary review like this is for staff to understand from us what we expect them to do. I think it's pretty clear from the discussion so far that we would like, that we would approve of a project that would mitigate a very serious problem in the neighborhood. And we would be willing to allow the demolition of 2 buildings, residence and a commercial property, for that to happen. In looking at the structure that would replace those 2 buildings, I think we have made it clear that we would like it not to be less ugly and to be better looking than it currently is. And some of those things that would make it better and a better neighbor have been outlined in the beginning. Those things are steps. But at the end of the day, it would be staff that would do
The question here is that this board cannot delegate its authority over to another entity. It could not delegate that authority over to the neighborhood association to give them the authority to make these stipulations. They cannot have. This board and Cultural Resources so it's trying to make the strongest motion possible to both give the message to MSD that I'd like to see them incorporate more elements that the neighborhood association has come up with. But that authority really has to come from cultural resources. We cannot delegate that authority to neighborhood association.
I think we have the same end goal. I would hate to see this project pass and put by, but I'd also like to see a little bit more.
But what could happen is that even if it is not approved today, MSD could just wait it out, come right back to the same spot. We have to still make a decision as to what we're going to do. It's unfortunate. I would like to see something stronger, or the ability to do something stronger. But the legal counsel is saying that's not possible.
Okay, Commissioner.
Well, I just hate to see this project, forward. Yeah, but I think that some things can be tweaked and made better, more studies and things without costing an awful lot more money.
I just wish it could be done by Wednesday.
You're right.
But I don't think they can build that fast. Okay, Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. No more public, I think. And like you like we, oh, yes, thank you. Oh, you are wonderful. Thank you.
Coffee? Regular or or water on them?
Nothing. Thanks very much.
Plain black, right?
Wait, is there coffee? Plain black? Thank you.
I was so
Oh, well, she's over here. You don't have to, I may even have that paper. And one day, came together, to the New York Times, and I was like, I just don't know. But I don't get bothered.
How are you? I'm fine. I got an email this morning from...
Something about this dinner.
I got an email this morning from a woman that...
Perfect ways, that combination, right, like, that combination, that the New York Times report, it's funny, those two together, they are perfect ways, they come all the way. Oh, great! Well, I had a guy, the meat, I was engineering, we had a firm, and if I could cover the, you know,
I got a board of
what? Oh, that's careful, are they free done? But, Right, yeah, I don't know for sure. Oh, David is on his way. Oh, Oh, you know, I'm sure. Yeah, I am. Telling me to turn it different feet. Turn right, what are you doing? No, you turn on your GPS? Oh, I don't know, you want the GPS to be on. Yeah, and how do I don't If when you go to settings, is there settings for that? There's something I gave you. No, you're wrong. Have you tried to turn it off? Here you go. Main Street. But it's mine, it's right here. Why do I want to right now? Right now. It is. Oh, here's Main Street. I also am there to tell me what to do with it.
I don't know about your call. I just got over that.
Really? I'm talking, we'll stay over here.
Alright. I don't think I've ever called it. I don't know if you want it. And all I did was just, type in, smooth around. And one of the people, a lot of text messages. My first day, what I do is Sunday, I go to my desktop and turn, cancel, I do the other one, I follow You can just go to your laptop or desktop and Google how to, whatever you want to do, usually every time I do something like that, they can tell me exactly how to do it. But you did. Oh. Right. But I mean, announcement, David said he was on his way, and I told him we could probably do without him until like 39, so we did. Oh.
Okay, commissioners, we are back in session. And we're going to revert to a skip item, information item. Mr. Rupp?
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to spend a few minutes coming to see you because you don't see me very often. But this is to talk about something that we're working on in anticipation of things, of what I think people generally know. It's time to put the list together and recruit for, in the city personnel system, for a Director of Cultural Resources office as Betsy figures out her transition to joining her husband in the Northwest. So that process has begun. The job posting was to be today, but it will be tomorrow. So as a reminder, the position is an official civil service job. It will be posted on the city website. Donna will send you the link to that website, so feel free to share it with anybody you'd like to in the network for recruitment. As you may know, in the personnel system, the personnel department creates a list for that job. There's not a current list for that job. Betsy was recruited 5 years ago. That list is gone. It, at the time, had attractions from all over the region and the city, and of course, preservation professionals from other communities across the country. So we think that will happen again, but we encourage people to send the link and share it with others. The posting closing is likely to be, we'll see whether with today not being the day it was posted tomorrow, whether we'll shift it a day or two, but March 12th, so we're in a pretty fast time frame. The recruitments will happen in a fashion where the city personnel gets the raw material. They make a relatively broad screening, and then there's a panel at the Department of Personnel that will interview top candidates, rank them in a list, and then I'm in this position as the appointing authority for this position. And my position as director of the agency is I'm in the appointing authority for this position. I will ultimately get 6 candidates that the choice will be made. So we're in the process of doing that, and a little bit I'm being a good Boy Scout and being prepared to doing that. But we know Tom is packing the current house, so we want to anticipate this. We also are working diligently to.
Wouldn't it just be easier just to not let Betsy leave?
Right.
We can't leave the garage in the basement after 6 now, so I think we're trapped. But we're not going to let Betsy leave completely until we have a chance to overlap Betsy with a new person sometime, to some degree. That's not something that we do readily in city government, but we're setting up the procedure so that we can do that. It may not be an overlap that's 40 hours and 40 hours in a given week. It may be some things from correspondence and whatnot, but I'll make 2 pleas for that. One, you don't want my schizophrenic activity substituting for what I do now and for Betsy. Because I do describe to the world that the Director of Cultural Resources for the City of St. Louis has one of the toughest jobs in city government. Because in this building, a lot of folks that have jobs in this position are giving money to folks. Cultural Resources doesn't give money. It has the simultaneous duty of protecting our heritage and our placemaking and our ability to be vibrant with an eye towards both the past and the future. Makes that tough. You say no. We have people that come here to ask for appeals. It's a tough job, and I'm particularly enamored with the idea of having some overlap between Betsy and the new person. So we'll arrange that to happen to help get that training. So just wanted to give you that update because you'll see that publicly posted today or tomorrow. Thanks. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, resuming our agenda, calling 1222 to 1224 Dolman.
James Cameron Coterie is another preliminary application for a semi-detached property Bowman Street and the Lafayette Square Historic District. Site, you agree with buildings to pretty much all new infill buildings, exception of a handful of older buildings. That's the project site. There are other houses that have been constructed that aren't shown on the geomap. Been updated yet. As the ordinance requires, a model example has been selected and will be replicated, and this is a 2000 record. It'll follow this building that was approved, I guess, in 2012. This looks very similar to that. And there it is. And these plans are very schematic. There's not a lot of detail with them, but the cultural research office will work with the developer to refine anything that might be lacking. See that it does deviate slightly from the model example by having some setbacks on side elevations, which the actual model example does not have, but that one has already been approved by the Preservation Board, so it's very similar to that. It'll be 4 sides of brick. What'll be a little different is there'll be a 1-story extension to the back, but that won't be good. I don't have a site plan, but that is the first floor plan to unite the shape of the envelope of the building, and there will be houses fairly close to both sides. There is currently another vacant lot to the north. So very quickly, a little context that does show the current status of the lot. There is building to the south of our site. On the left-hand side, our side is on the left. Context south, context south. So subject to review of final details and exterior materials, the staff is recommending preliminary approval. Now, I will say that there was a representative from the Lafayette Square Restoration Committee session too. She had to leave, but she indicated to me that they are in support of the project with the provision that the little round old window that is present in the historic model is with be included in the development street set. Questions?
Commissioner?
No questions.
Okay, let's have the applicant.
Hello, John Muller, Diversified Real Estate Group. Besides the project, I can't really add anything in addition to what Jan said. I think she covered everything in scope.
Questions, Commissioner?
Care that round window idea?
Well, window will be in. My own example has one. That's a new one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kalina, motion?
Preservation Board grant preliminary approval for this project, stipulation, details, and specifications that we worked through cultural research for final approval.
Is there a second?
Good.
Second by Alderman Kennedy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye? Was that a...
That was an aye.
Okay, not like a short.
Aye.
Okay, or, you're right, a naval greeting. Okay, I'm sorry, the motion carries. Okay, Commissioners, we are now going to reconstitute ourselves as an administrative panel and hear appeals of denial. I note the presence of Commissioner Robinson, giving us 5 commissioners present, and a quorum on agenda item D815, and why don't we do 815 and?
There's two, actually, 1 by Ann Avenue.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it separately because
not sure if there's anyone here for the second part of this general city kind of.
C. There is no one here for the second part.
Okay, all right, so we'll... Okay. Applicant, I'm sorry, I'm Andrea Gagan. Just stop this for the truth. Ordinance 4689 is submitted by 4925, and ordinance 57078 is submitted by 382. Having applied for to install two non-illuminated signs as property is 815 and proposed wall sign facing 7th Street is 2.5 feet by 31 feet, which is a total of 77 square feet. Maximum square foot, First Street facade under the square foot standard is 40, so that is double. Permit was denied as 10th Street sign not. Here is the location of the proposed street sign. Along here. Here's a mock-up of what that sign looks like on the wall. And this is just showing the location of the sign that faces Ann. This sign, however, is in compliance with the ordinance. 7th Street sign, while it is almost double square footage, it is the scale of the sign and articulation of the windowless wall of the gym main support purpose of the sign is somewhat larger than 40 square feet, although maybe not 5 square feet that it currently is. Based on these preliminary findings, the Cultural Resource Office recommends the Preservation Board of Director's denial of the application with installation of signs that does not comply with the
Question?
Oh, yeah, I also have to record letters from the Spillard Restoration Group, which is a group sign, as well as the Alderman, Board Alderman Jack Picard, was also a first sign.
You made it French. You made Alderman Cotter French. I like that. I will now call him Alderman Qatar. He'll show the appellate.
My name is Jim Lusardi. I'm with Landmark Sign Company.
Is your testimony going to be the truth?
Oh, truth.
Okay, we're building a record here. So anything that you believe ought to be on the record, you need to give to Adama.
Okay. Basically, I just got renderings, which both the Restoration Board approved, and also too, I just went through the Board of Adjustments with the city for zoning, and got both those approved as well. Basically, they had nothing to say about the front sign. They did meet the standards. The back side, when I met with the Restoration Committee, they agreed that it's such a large wall that it won't affect any aesthetic or anything bad with the actual neighborhood itself. Yeah, I got copies. I got 5 copies of each for you.
Does that conclude your testimony?
That concludes it.
Okay, Commissioner, questions?
President, is this sign illuminated or not?
No,
Self-illuminated, no light shining on it?
no light shining on it at this moment. They were talking about it, as a matter of fact, the restoration group tried to get them to do that as well, but at the time, it's gonna be fairly well lit, because it's gonna be a parking lot, for the lofts, and it'll be a very light, parking area, so where the side opening, so.
Those letters making their way down here?
Are there letters coming? Or, no?
They're just signs, the letters, so.
Yeah, they're stuck on.
I made enough copies, I think, for everybody, but.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Give us just a moment to digest this, please. Roughly the size of a school bus. Did you put a time clock on it?
Yeah, probably. I gotta come again.
Good luck this time. Alderman Kennedy, do you have a motion to make this?
I move that the preservation board, the overturn.
Okay, the motion, as I understand it, is to overturn the director's and I'll sign. The second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
I'm not one to argue against these things. But I think that brings up some good points. It's not going to be offensive to the neighborhood.
What he said.
Okay, good. Commissioners, with the motion made and seconded, I will call a roll. Alderman Kennedy, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Fastman, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
If that is 4 yeses, motion carries. The director's denial is overturned. Okay, Commissioners, we have a problem. We have an appeal before us on the same property, 815 Ann Avenue. Is there anyone in the audience who represents the appellant? Okay. What are our options here?
Well, you could proceed, you could defer unless there's a time bar to doing that. Have they heard from,
Yes, I heard from them that they had a family emergency.
Okay. Given a family emergency, do I hear a motion to defer consideration of this until the next month's meeting?
Motion to defer.
Hearing no objection, let's defer this until the next meeting. Okay, let us hear agenda item F, 2111 Gravelway.
It's an application for signage at 2111 Gravelway Avenue in the Snake Heights District. I need to enter into ordinance 64689, amended by 64925, and 67901, in the Heights. Also the agenda. This is the
location of property, basically a wedge at the corner of San Joy and Gravois. This is a pole sign that installed. Pole sign has been there for some time. It previously didn't have any signage on it. The signage was installed on both sides. This is the building itself. There's a large sign here, a smaller sign, and then there is also a window decal here, and then there's a smaller window.
That's most of a Starbucks.
Yeah. And then this is the other side of the wall with the sign installed facing west. The applicant applied for a permit to retain a double-site pole sign and 5 non-illuminated wall signs and 2 vinyl windows. As I said, the pole sign was existing, as were the signboards that are however, there was no signage on them. The current signage exists, the double-sided pole signs, 3 wall signs, and 2 vinyl signs. 2 of the wall signs have been removed from the total square foot of the existing signage is 230.5 square feet, which is well above the 50 square feet allowed in the standard. The application was denied. Signage does not meet the system height historic district ordinance. The owner appealed the decision of the Conservation Board. Basically, the pole sign does not meet the historic district standard and is in excess of 15 feet in height, which is the limit set by the standard. As I said before, the allowed square footage is 50 square feet, and the total signage is almost 5 times that. As far as wall signs, 2 large signs obviously are similar. The second, third one underneath, financing available, is similar, but it has a more temporary quality to it. Existing signage was installed without a permit. Owner proposes to retain all of these signs. Given the use of these pole signs and sign frames in the wall, it may be appropriate to allow signs in this location. Additional wall sinks and banners more clearly seem to be beyond the amount of signs the sewer district may find appropriate and introduce visual clutter. Based on these preliminary findings, the Resource Officer recommends Conservation Board pull the directors out of an application for retaining signs. Not required.
So, which signs are cultural resources, saying they're in violation of which are acceptable?
Well, I would say, in total, altogether, all not appropriate.
Okay.
But we were saying, I think that the ones on the wall, existing, where there's an existing sign might be appropriate for the other stuff.
Okay.
Basically, I think we're talking mainly about financing available and wall signs here.
Okay.
Like I said, it was existing. It is the main sign that you'll see. You can't really see those other signs from the street, north street there. So it probably is important to business. wouldn't approve it if it was a new school sign. It makes it appropriate.
You just wanted to take down financing available in $500,000. Can't you put whatever you want in your window?
I don't know this,
Is that in the window?
It's a sunshade.
it doesn't really actually say in this ordinance that it is window signs aren't regulated.
Was that right?
Some do, but it's specific.
What about sunshade?
There's signs on them.
Other questions? Okay, let's hear from the appellant.
Oh, did the neighborhood come in on the?
Yeah, I haven't.
How was?
I hadn't heard anything directly.
Appellant?
You informed me, or?
Wait, stop. Anthony Zanti?
There was a meeting,
Let's
Anthony Zanti.
And is your testimony going to be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an appeal of a director's denial. What is your case?
As you see it on the wing walls, the two big signs, they were already existing. I have pictures going back almost 10 years ago from previous people that had the place, and the guy that I bought the property from, he said them signs been up for over 30 years. And as far as on the pole sign, that was probably there, could have been there 100 years. The only thing I added was the financing available and the 500 down, which is a perforated sign that's just to stop the sun from coming in, but it's obviously, art. As far as every other sign, I had a couple banners up, and I talked to Betsy Bradley, and she said, here, we take the banners down, which I've already done. That's why on the other side of the wing wall, you see like the paint's a little distorted, just from, I guess, the moisture from behind it. I put about $80,000 in this place. I just recently spent $10,000 on the fence just a few weeks ago, and then as I'm putting it in, I get a phone call from this board saying that they weren't okay with the signs. When I got there, the place was a rat-infested, boarded up, firebound building. It was, terrible for the neighborhood. I've been trying to do everything I can to make the place look good. With the respect of still trying to have a car lot. You don't see it on the pictures, but there's a bus station with a rooftop. There's 2 trees in front, so if you blink, you can miss my car lot. That's why the size of the signs. But you can see that they have metal frames behind where you see Affordable Auto Credit Discount Center. Them signs been up there for a long time, and it's a thick metal frame that goes around. There's lag bolts go all the way through both sides. As far as financing available, that's just, it's a banner that can come up and go and so forth. I'd like to have it if I can, but, and as far as the 500 down, that's just, it's doing specials that change on the windows. The place never had storefronts like that. They were plywood with those small windows originally a few years back.
It could say, let's go blue.
It could say.
Okay, good enough. Is that your case, sir?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. One other thing. I was in a hearing last month for the Board of Adjustment over the fence, and the McKinley Heights neighborhood was there representing. All they wanted was the fence. They had no problem with the signs, and that was in the notes as far as the neighborhood's concerned.
Don't sit permanently. I don't want you back to just one second. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak on this subject?
I have a question.
Well, then, come up here. I will swear you in, and then we'll put you on the record. Your name, sir?
Rocco Dana,
Your address?
2325 Ann.
And is your testimony going to be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, proceed.
So, I missed the last...
Direct the questions to me.
Sure. I was like, can I actually ask a question to the Conservative Justice? Okay,
I will ask that.
Sure, that'd be great. I wasn't quite sure how McKinley Heights was informed about this happening today.
Okay.
And it's possible that I just missed it, but then it's our last community association meeting. I'm on the development board, and I didn't hear anything about this. I'm just curious. And it's just by happenstance, I'm here today, so it's by chance. So.
And we did mail
Okay, posted on the website, notice mailed.
Okay, so, and who does that get mailed to?
I don't know.
Sure, so what? Yeah, I mean, just, yeah, do you know what address it goes
It's a group mailing to all the neighborhood organizations, or most of the neighborhood organizations in the city. It's a group mailing of the preliminary and the final.
Okay.
And I don't know who specifically off the top of my head, but I'm sure that Kelly Heights is in neighborhood organization. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Okay, we will get to the bottom of that.
Great, thank you. And this would be something that we would typically have to discuss and have time to come up with a decision as a community to give our opinion to. But have to be here today, so it's a little surprise to us.
My only advice is to do what I do, and because there is a monthly meeting, I simply check the agenda every month.
Right.
Is there anything here for me?
Oh, check this agenda.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I also do know that the aldermen of all affected projects receive notice of projects in their wards. So a bug in your alderman ears.
So, yeah, so we would have to rely on our aldermen?
No, the best thing to do is to go to the website.
Okay, and check it out, okay.
Just to make your web address to our office, we can include some individuals.
Never give Donna your email address. Bad things happen. She'll email you all kinds of stuff.
Okay. So I would say just because the community wasn't, I actually can't speak for the community because it was the last meeting, but I'm a little surprised that this has come about. And is it possible to defer this a month or no? Is that a bad idea?
We actually have a ticking clock on this one.
Okay. Okay.
But your testimony would be that you do not believe that the neighborhood was informed, and you certainly were not informed.
Correct, but I can't wholly say, yeah, we're correct. I can't say that is an accurate, that the neighborhood was or was not informed, because that was not the last meeting. I am on the development board, and typically all these things are referred to me as well, so,
Yeah, that is also true. You may also testify in your own person.
right. I mean, as a person, individual who owns buildings on that block and lives close nearby there, I would say that the additional sign, it becomes it does detract from the building, as cultural resources have said, as a whole, and it becomes very overly signage, for lack of better terms and things like that.
Would you feel better if there were fewer signs?
Me personally, as not representing the community, I would say that yes, I would feel better if there were less signs. I understand that the gentleman needs to run his business and things like that, and getting good advertising and things like that is very important. As I have my own business and things like that, signage is very important. But there is a certain point in time, in my opinion, where a number of signs can be an overabundance or an eyesore rather than and hindering things rather than adding and detracting from the community as a whole, as overly advertised and things like that. So.
Having sat through the formation of the McKinley Heights Local Historic District, I can tell you I am particularly inclined to listen to what McKinley Heights historic district people have to say. You all fought really hard to get this.
I'm sorry, did it what?
You all fought hard to get the historic district.
Yes, yeah, we did.
And it's going to be growing pains.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from the appellant one last time. You want to add something?
He was,
Just come closer to the mic.
I believe it's the president of your guys' thing was last month was at the Board of Aldermen, the adjustment meeting, and they were there. So you guys, you must not have known about it for 2 months, because there was a big banner out in front of my place that showed the meeting.
Do you know who that was?
They live right around the corner, guy's got like red hair, is kind of in his 60s. He's the president or the treasurer? I can't think of his name.
I don't know who that was, our president's a woman.
No, okay, who's the treasurer? The two gentlemen showed up, the guy's got kind of reddish hair, I can't.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay, well, he represented McKinley Heights, and there was a banner in front of my car lot for a month. So, and they were talking about the fence and the signs, it was for that. And he said he had no problem with the signs, he said nobody from McKinley Heights had problems, they just want the fence up, and they wanted me to plant some shrubs, which I did show.
I suspect most of this has to do with a process that we need to deal with, which is making sure that they hear more about what is going on.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Killeen, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, what was that reference you made to a ticking clock?
I do not believe it's a different one.
Over to now?
I do not.
That couldn't be a legal motion. Preservation Board uphold the records not.
Okay, I rule out the motion, rules for lack of a second. Do I hear another motion?
Now, I,
Okay, the Commissioners are waiting for a motion. Raj, public and three minutes. Commissioner Pappler?
Yes, I would recommend that the Preservation Board uphold the records denial of signs if they do not comply with the United Historic District standards.
Is that second?
Okay, motion made and seconded. Discussion?
Well, I think they can tell me that, but still, it's right.
So is your motion to deny all the signs or some of the signs?
No, just some.
Could you clarify? Could you clarify your motion then? Let's look at the signs. Financing available, yes or no?
No.
Window shade, yes or no?
Yes.
Affordable Auto Credit Discount Center, yes or no? The one that's been there.
Yeah, I know.
All the time.
I guess keep it as it is.
Okay, and the thing on a stick, yes or no?
Oh, fine, yes.
Okay, so basically, it's financing available goes away. You second that motion? Okay. The motion is to overturn the director's denial on all the signs except for financing available. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call a roll. Commissioner Fassman, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Kennedy, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
The motion carries. The staff denial is partially upheld and partially denied. Commissioners, do I hear a motion to...
No, Betsy has a brief statement.
Do I hear a motion? Never mind. Betsy. Tempting.
I know.
But my better self says no. By the way, if anybody needs to move their car from the garage.
No, they're having an event tonight because the garage is open.
Oh, good. Okay.
Maybe you could do the minutes while I'm getting,
Commissioners, if anybody read the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, do I hear a motion in that regard? To approve minutes? Oh, do you hear a motion? Will you
I will move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Hearing no objection, the minutes from the last meeting are approved. Thank you, Commissioners.
I know it's late and I would have,
It's only 6, it's fine.
we might take this for another time, but my time is growing short. And so that's why I want maybe to, I will maybe make it quicker than usual. I'm here to
That is so sad. Take all the time you want.
Well, this is a topic you've seen me talk about before, and I did want to bring this study and topic to some kind of closure at this point, from my point of view, although it certainly might be a topic that I'm sure will be a topic that we'll talk about. And so my presentation will show you how my thinking has changed over time, and I have possibility of how we might go forward with this, a couple possibilities here at the end. So, I want to point out, it's been kind of a long study of mine. I thought about it before and first spoke about it in the fall of 2014, talked about it in 2015, and then in late 2015, and here we are today. I did look at what other cities have done. I did look at other means of assessing compatibility than trying to articulate them to standards that we use, and look at the idea of a scorecard. And I've asked for feedback from various groups, and I'm still, of course, open to any feedback. Open topic. I wanted to remind us again of the situation we have here in St. Louis. Our historic districts are different than those in many cities, I think, where there's a great deal of variety of districts. Most of ours are residential. There are streets and lines with comparable houses of similar form and scale. As you know, red brick likes to be the color, but we have some districts where there is similar variety in that. But we have kind of a consistent use of material and color on each building, and so we have, by and large, a lot of set of comparable buildings rather than compatible buildings in most of our districts. And I want to go back here to 3 other places that I looked at. I think they have important ideas and for us to consider. Philadelphia did an exhaustive study. They used these strategies for design, and I find this a particularly useful way of thinking about how we design buildings in historic districts. And it ranged from literal replication, which we're familiar with, to rather than intentional opposition. I think there's a kinder way to say that is introducing some contrast and juxtaposition, because sometimes that really works. In between, we have conventionalist and stylish types. The relationships are pretty strong, but they're not replicative. And abstract reference would be a looser reference to what. So from this broad look, I'll say that I think the recommendations from Philadelphia are a little traditional. They do align recommendations for strategies in design with conditions in the district, which I applaud. But if we were to adopt their approach, we would continue to do what we have been, which would be to build comparable, sometimes replica buildings in our historic districts, because we have single predominant environment and architecture in each of our districts. So we would do replication in such a style. And then in our few districts that have greater variety or more lots, we use more contrasting types of design. And I find this, I can't really argue with it, but I think that it just pretty much the status quo. And as you might know, I'm kind of a serial reformer, so I think it might be good to take a look at Denver has this really strong intent statement that's about 10 years old, that really puts emphasis on the district and having new buildings. They have this, what I think is an unattainable ideal that the buildings be neutral in their effect, and it's not pretty comparable. I don't think the buildings would be neutral. They talk about respecting the core, how one will proceed to be designed, and I finally did find a good example of the building that they approved under their approach. Let's start at the bottom. This is the streetscape. This is a tear down and build. It's a much larger building. The building that was lost is clearly there on the top of the streetscape. And it looks like there's another tear down to the right of the new building. And so the streetscape will probably change again. The new building is predominantly brick. It does have some actually 2 tons of brick, and then there's another material introduced on the right side of it. I would call this reinvention in the style or type. It has some relationship to the historic building to its loft, which is predominantly brick. But it clearly, it has a porch, but we have a more modern porch here, wearing grade rather than raised up on raised basement. I particularly like the porcelain brick with the windows. See it traditionally, the traditional way to use brick, even though we're using it as veneer here. I just found this one pretty interesting and maybe something that we could see here in St. Louis, but I don't think it adheres very well to their statements about having additional and second scale streetscapes, and I think it's might be overbuilt. But anyway, the board did approve this, so something for us to consider. Then in Oregon, they took a look about infill design, and the key thing here for me is that the district has this idea of using a course principle to guide how we use those goals. That's in Oregon, and I'm still sticking with that, although I'm qualified in this district. So I'm still working with a set of principles that needed them to inform what I wrote out. And this is a new one, and this is design review will have. I think the Preservation Board has a key role here as we move away from comparable design to compatible to assess the building in its larger context and to look at it as the general public might see it, and so I'm not by any means advocating to go to this board doesn't have that. I do feel that the historic district is a resource. Obviously, we think that here in St. Louis we would have so many, but I'm adding that the historic district conveys time and place, but it also can and probably should convey change over time. And that's maybe not what we do. This is my little vocabulary study. That compatibility is not comparability. And compatible, if we really mean what we say when we use the word compatible, we're talking about all those apples, and we're even talking about bringing more to this or that. It means that they go together, but they are not essentially the same. That they don't have to be representative or really comparable. They can be compatible. Compatibility is local and varied. In terms of what would be appropriate in one location, it's not necessarily appropriate somewhere else. Here are 2 examples that I think are very site-specifically compatible, color materials and other matters, like in the historic district and not. Compatibility is less similar to comparability, but there are comparisons to consider. that compatibility lists several of the design approaches. Here's the new building that I found, it was recently approved by the Landmarks Commission in New York City for Brooklyn. See, it's not very comparable except in form and scale, but it's...
Did they replicate boarded up plywood windows?
No, that's the rage for that unfinished wood that will date it firmly to this time, because I think it's pretty good. We get tired of that if it doesn't burn very well. So that was an interesting one that I found that they could use. And actually, it's not that similar to what we might consider here. Most of their other buildings are commercial areas, so they have much bearing on what we do. Took a bold step, and thought we might all agree that this is a good example of compatibility as an achievable design challenge, because on this proposal, using not elimination of all creativity and design, set some parameters, and process those parameters. Compatibility is often a visual judgment, and thanks to this image, that's what you're seeing. Anyway, yeah, her latest work, now here's an image she found, yeah. And I'm pretty sure we're in Europe because if you look to the right, you can see there's something pretty interesting going on there up top. That we know what the public is really here. And I think this is a well comparable to the historic site. And, oh gosh, we even have a physical book edition, which we try to avoid at all costs here in St. Louis, and I'm not sure that's necessary, but I also want to make the point, it's often and mostly visual, but there's some other aspects to bring into the mix, such as the quality of materials and design, sustainability and the comfort of the building, and its suitability to modern needs. So I used to say and advocate primarily a visual judgment, and I think that's a strong component of it, that it's minor variations are preferable to repetition. I think we all agree that it's kind of hard to articulate how many of a design is enough. But I think if we encourage some variations and not really looking for standard design or the minimum design of anything that we want to design for the location, even simple variations in the building. And another transition in my thinking is evident here, that the use of materials should reflect how buildings are constructed at that time and not clean so desperately to brick veneer when we don't buildings anymore, and maybe good run for in some ways. That doesn't mean we still couldn't see buildings of that time, because we see brick used in a more modern way. And I think we should do that as well. Fairly rather proposed that I get built. And also I think there's a place for coherency and contrast. That punctuation point, that the leap from similarity of our streetscape might not be a bad idea in some instances. Another just to be fine, this is a metal screen on a narrow facade that provides some contrast to the brick building on the other side of that. I don't know that it might be quite different if this a large expanse of the screen, a large building exists, but having some elements like this that are obviously different provides that sense of vibrant authenticity that we want to have in St. Louis. And we used to do that all the time. You know, every time I walk by our mid-century modern buildings, I think, gosh, what a cool thing. Obviously. And these, of course, are residential buildings like we have in our historic districts. They are in places that have strong historic character. And we were bold in doing like this. Here's two examples that I just like, and that they show, I think, compatibility but not comparability very much. The one on the left, I think, raises the question of what is comparable, compatible material if it's not the same. And I think the value of the colors, and we often see gray for such tiers of red. The value is similar, color that you might naturally find pretty good, gray and red with others. And on the right is my most favorite. Give us a round corners, provide some visual compatibility. Of course, everything else is compatible, not comparable. Probably that garage door opening to the alley that we have here, other than that, it's really quite interesting. And it's probably higher quality than some of the more humble buildings. I think it's that type of building that we need to think about welcoming. And these two I've often used, I used to say that it's like a choice, this or that, and now I realize it's not a choice. We're on this continuum. And if we open the idea of compatibility, we'll see some more on the right that are a little bit safer, that refer more directly to what was built, or we might see things that are more obviously other times built in different ways. And I think we've been able to focus on that. And also, one comment that I really took to heart is our neighborhood needs to accommodate a wider range of uses. We're not about use of buildings sometimes. I think though that community uses will demand buildings that are as possible. This building in Denver got a lot of stuff. The key thing here is to look at the balconies on the building. That curved element of the privacy that gives some privacy to single-family houses. It's not just a curved wall here, there's a functional relationship there. And in our dense cities, our St. Louis, we might have some privacy factors. Some new types of housing, like co-housing, that would require a different footprint. And density is always something big. Just have ramifications, so that's, and I keep going back to this thing that every time I read it, it comes up what I'm interested in, and that is this balance between the static and the dynamic urban character. Yes, we want to maintain the strong character that we have, but there's probably room for that more dynamic building that, I don't know, that building that clearly refers to change over time. So this report that I wrote is in the form of standards because that's how we think about buildings. And so just came naturally to write it that way. And what I think, if I would sum up what they do, they expand the concept of compatibility. And they include it based on the principles. This picture is to remind me to say that it also works on some standards for storefronts, that where there's no historic storefront, the same that the replacement storefront could be different in design. But there is existing storefront materials that we have to completed, so we have options there as well. So again, these standards have an intent statement, fairly long because it lays out these ideas of how it can be compatible. Comparable. It includes the table that recommendations only, tips to hand as different size design solutions are appropriate at different locations, and so just get to find a little more open to different solutions. There's only 3 general standards that have to meet some of these aspects of comparability, but not necessarily all. So we want to hear these designs presented in terms of the approach to design and have the features that establish compatibility pointed out, and that we're not looking for formulaic or artificial. As far as height, we say that height doesn't necessarily have to be the same, but it does kind of save off one story buildings is not having those sort of urban columns not making any change to the idea of comparable mapping and very mapping for mistakes. Setbacks would become the same development. Street design composition, the emphasis is on human scale and reflecting patterns of use and avoiding large expanses of lots, such as blank walls.
Or black wall.
Having comparable ratio of it has to always be a typo, but I did check for something. And everyone having a garage door. A lot of the standards address materials, and one of them is just that there would be one dominant material on the facade. That's long pattern here. We have changes in material. We're not going to have one facade of one material and three sides of another material unless it returns substantial to terminate the logical point and maybe around two sides. We have changes in materials. This is that building in Raleigh, North Carolina, for controversial. And we don't have to go like this. Following along form-based zoning and other things, we're just going to say no to siding. I want to show these materials. Material and color, there's, again, we don't want too much color, we do want some color, and emphasis on similar values, for one color, one material. Windows and doors, again, you can relate to patterns of use, visible, so, in summary, be clear that I find Denver's approach more compelling than Philadelphia's, what they approve from the It's quite tired of comparability, and I don't think it's giving us enough discussion line entirely. We're not getting the buildings that we could. I propose that we open the door for more design that's less comparable. Of course, we're not preclude comparable buildings, particularly in the part of that, and although we don't address use, that we don't use to the organization and uses that have buildings that are so comparable. So feedback I received, not surprising, is design professional solutions has changed, and we have to point out that the overlap of the corridor history and the higher residential market values with quite the fact that our service is replaced with lots of buildings, comparable buildings, support investment. Some preservationists have concerns about this. I know they have concerns, but it seems like a big change, and it's not what we've always done, and not always been necessary. Would see, but just and hopefully for something else. Everybody agrees that we have to talk about this, explain that when we say compatibility, now we do need compatibility and compatibility. And of course, the silent majority in the historic history are those that I talked about. So there is some work to do there, so we don't look kind of push back. Oh my gosh, I didn't expect that, but look at that building around. So what we might do here, if you remember our solar panel installation policy is based on what historic standards already said, and it didn't do anything in the standards and flesh them out and describe more what that visual compatibility meant. The board could consider adopting compatibility construction standards as a policy. That policy is used only in certain conditions. Primarily if the historic district standards are used for the historic example, and that the applicant is preservation board can all agree that these standards help us talk about compatibility. If you're interested in doing that, I could put the policy on the agenda for the March meeting. We could gather comments between now and then, and at that time we could adopt for action on or ask for revisions to the policy. Alternatively, I could send a report in the report format. It would be available for you to review our revising the standards and the board council. I am stepping out the door, and this is my best recommendation after 9 years here. Aaron, you go.
Do I hear a motion to put this onto our March agenda for consideration? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of such a motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? March.
And then, I think we'll want to have it open to public
It may well be that the action we take in March is to have a public hearing, or to read a public hearing.
Okay.
Any input, community input we can gather between now and then would be very useful. Also, it occurs to me that most of the new construction plans for our city, or unplanned for our city, but where it's going to occur, is in neighborhoods that are not covered by historic districts, that are not protected by any district standards. Is there some way that this could be a city policy set of goals that would help aldermen, developers, neighborhood groups in places where there aren't historic districts?
I don't think so, unless EPA or associate project. I do think, though, that if we adopt it as a policy, say we do review projects in national districts or districts that aren't able to do it, temporary flexibility would be acceptable, like the whole board. And in a section of ability, which is articulated in standards, but standing on any great things. And this is our city's interpretation of that ability. And getting it adopted. Go ahead. I mean, I think first of all, we have to get some,
I have in my years sitting on this board changed my mind a little. When I first sat, I wondered how could every home in Liberty not want local historic districts. I have come to realize that there are good reasons for not wanting them, although I still find a reason for having to work about it. But I wonder if there were some place for these documents to be. I mean, I have never felt that a more thoughtful element of you in looking at design standards. I know you're so excited.
They are, I can speak to it just for a moment. I would remind us that architecture rolls out of culture. And every building that is designed and built reflects the cultural view of those people. And so then America's architecture is primarily dominated by European motifs and European culture, European lifestyles and European ways of thinking. And in some ways, and in many ways, it devalues the cultural input of other groups that have made up the fabric of America. America is more than its European heritage. But there is no way to express that, or better yet, I would say it is more difficult to express these other cultural views as they reflect themselves in architecture in America, oftentimes because of historic issues. They are in fact preserving a cultural view of one group that makes up the fabric of America. And so when we talk about cultural resources, often that really would mean that we should be looking at the contribution of all of the groups that have helped build America as they reflect themselves in architecture. And there are some parts in the city that you can find some of this, though it's more difficult today. So many of our historic districts are really preserving just a portion of America's cultural heritage. And so that makes me have these mixed feelings about historic districts. Culture is a people's total way of doing and looking at things. It is their customs, their traditions, their language, their social organization, their economic organization, their political organization, and it is also how they view the world, the lens by which they interpret all of human activity and their experience of the world. Culture reflects how they have interpreted their experiences and the practices that have grown out of those experiences with those people. And every group brings something of value to the table. And oftentimes, these kinds of discussions deny the richness of the cultures that have made up there. And so then lies some of my problems. And years ago when I was on this board, I raised the point that we oftentimes think that groups who have been historically denied access to some buildings in this country to have the same kind of connection and feel the same kind of value of people who have benefited from those for decades. For example, it's been within my lifetime that I could not, as an African-American youth, go to the farm. Within my lifetime. And when it finally opened up, only way I could go in there is by some special event. And I had to wear my very best clothes or you were run off a brand. So why would you expect a community that has had that experience to have the same kind of historical connection or emotional tie to that architecture that people who have benefited and could have gone there all their lives? To think so is not realistic. And so then we start applying all of these same caveats to everybody, and that's not everyone's experience. Yet, that aspect or that richness or certainly that experience is not included in our discussion about architecture and building of neighborhoods, and it should. So then lies our problem.
What do you think? To start opening up? Like if you get moved somewhat away from replicating, great white cells over time, or a little bit less reinforcing of that?
I think it's going to have to start with a larger discussion about, the appreciation of the culture that has helped build America, and then how that can reflect itself in architectural design. Remember, all architecture is designed to reflect the people's view on how to live. Not every culture believes in just having these linear streets and these individual, kind of very separate types of living styles. That's not the same with every group. And so to at least have an understanding of that. At one point I thought that the Cultural Resources Office should be far different than how it is today, if we're really going to call it cultural resources. Really what we're talking here is really back to architectural design. In some cities, the Cultural Resources Office that I have read about, they make it their job to really talk about preserving all of the different groups and their cultural
input to the history of that city. That's not happening here. And so I think we need a larger discussion first, and then how it reflects itself as architecture, and then we can get into how to open this up. Because we have to discuss how that maybe we can have special areas, or districts, or some other ways to include it. I don't have that solution yet, but I know we certainly need to open up the conversation and to make people more sensitive to the fact that America is more than just a European heritage. And then really the effect that it has upon other groups who don't think in the same way. You force them to live in particular types of modality that is not consistent with how they see the world. And in many ways, that's not healthy. Everybody has a right to live not only decently, but in ways that reflect their cultural view, without infringing upon other people's right to do the same thing. It's a different approach. So I appreciate this because this really, in some ways, begins to open up a thing. If you hadn't raised this issue, I might not have gotten to this point today. So I appreciate it.
Well, I've been, because, if you remember Lorraine, the internet, she went to one of those meetings about the MGA project area, and one of the women, there was a Brown family who asked me to go over the I think it was about where I said, I'm black, but I love things in the architecture. And I think that someone would, need to say that kind of talking. And then I was sitting in the park, and there by North Sarah, and I picked something up, and this came out of Chicken Shelter, and I was sitting there, looking at it, what do you know with new architecture around here? She said, I like the old stuff better. So I think those two conversations, we shouldn't suppose what anybody likes to dislike, and there's a great variety of everybody's response to the silver minor they get set into sometimes not as much my choice. So it also raises a really good question about what the world is going to do with the business.
Correct.
And, that is a problem from the historic district, local historic district, nurturing management, every point of view, because we have, I don't think anybody's really looked at anything how that's successful. Number of losses that we have, and then what our district standards would be appropriate for someone who's building an asset. And that's
and certainly having, coming from one cultural perspective does not mean you cannot appreciate any and all others. But when you certainly live in an environment that has historically disenfranchised a cultural group, and does not even inform or educate the general community, including that group of its own historical contributions, then that doesn't mean that by saying I like the architecture of St. Louis, that they may not also enjoy the cultural architecture that comes from their own group. But they may have less information about it because they're not taught it in this environment. You cannot go to very many architecture schools and learn about the architectural design of the Akan people of Ghana or the Kikongo out of the Congo. You won't learn it. But there are some examples of it here in the city of St. Louis. Yes. The ville itself had a Congolese tradition at a particular time of year. Everyone in the neighborhood would sweep from the back of the house out the front and whitewash the curb and the tree. You can go places and see what's called an Nkisi in parts of North St. Louis, which are the wagon wheels painted specific colors, red, white, or black, with images of chicken or geese, direct out of Central Africa. There's several books written about it, without any study of it or any education of it in our educational systems, you'll think that it's junk. And so in many instances, the city has come and declared it to be junk and stopped that tradition in the field from doing so because they would be facing the curve. So a greater sensitivity to it could really make St. Louis a much more vibrant city.
I would preface the last time we spoke just before AJ left. This time, it is just before festivities. Tomorrow, they post the job for the new cultural resources office director. This is a job that will attract professionals from across the country. We've got something to offer. We should offer.
Commissioners, do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Okay, if there are no objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.